She was invited to the show to make the crowd laugh. The producers thought that an elderly woman in a floral dress would be ridiculed by the audience and become another funny act. But when Evelyn came on stage and started singing, the audience fell silent in just a few minutes. She went from being a joke to a sensation. What happened next changed the lives of everyone in the room forever. Evelyn Dupree adjusted her glasses as she stared at the faded newspaper spread across her kitchen table. The early Alabama sunlight streamed through the blinds, landing gently on her cinnamon-colored hands as she filled in the crossword with quiet certainty. 7 letters. Means with great passion. She whispered to herself, then smiled. Fervent. It was how she'd done everything in her life. With fervor, even when the world didn't seem to notice. At T69, Evelyn's days were filled with small, sacred routines. Black coffee in her favorite Tuskegee University mug, a morning walk with Otis, her senior Labrador retriever, and afternoons volunteering at the community center, helping kids with homework in a neighborhood most folks drove past with their doors locked. She hadn't taught formally in over a decade, but Mrs. Dupree was still Miss E. To the kids on the block, the lady who knew every Supreme Court ruling and made the best banana pudding in Jefferson County. She didn't need spotlights. She had peace. The phone rang, a sharp sound against the quiet calm of her kitchen. Hello? Miss Evelyn? It's Leona from the choir. Evelyn chuckled, already knowing where this was going. I saw the flyer, Leona said. That big TV show, American Torchlight, they're holding auditions downtown next week. Evelyn smiled politely. Oh, baby, those shows ain't for women like me. You know that ain't true. You've got a voice that makes people cry in church. I got a voice that's been through some things. That ain't always what they want. After they hung up, Evelyn sat back in her chair, staring at the wooden music box on the shelf, the one her late husband, Harold, had given her the night she sang solo for the first time in college. She hadn't sung solo since. Not since that day in 1975 when she auditioned for the state choir, and the white conductor leaned back in his chair, folded his arms, and said, "You've got a nice voice, for your kind. But you don't have the polish we're looking for." It had stayed with her. That pause, that smile, the casual way he took her hope and folded it into nothing. Life moved on. She married Harold, raised 2 daughters, taught U.S. history to 3 generations of black children in underfunded classrooms, and buried her dreams like so many others had to. But 3 blocks away, Leona was uploading something to the American Torchlight website. A grainy clip she'd secretly recorded of Evelyn singing "His Eye is on the Sparrow" at last Easter service. No makeup, no staging. Just Evelyn in a blue choir robe, eyes closed, voice lifted like a prayer point. 3 days later, Evelyn's phone rang again. The caller ID said, "Private number." "This is she," Evelyn said cautiously. "Hi. Is this Evelyn Dupree? This is Chase Landry from American Torchlight. We received a video of you singing, and wow. We'd love to invite you to perform on next week's live taping in Atlanta." Evelyn's heart gave a confused thump. "I didn't send no video." "Well, someone did. It's a church performance, yes? You sang 'His Eye is on the Sparrow'." "I did. But I'm not sure about all this." In a room full of interns and clipboards, Chase covered his mic and smirked. "We got our sympathy slot," he whispered to his assistant. "Old lady, church voice, perfect for viral buzz. Back on the line," he said. "We'll cover everything. Travel, hotel, meals. You'd be an inspiration, Miss Dupree." Evelyn's fingers drummed the table. She thought of the music box, of Harold, of that conductor. "You really want me to come sing?" "We really do." She didn't say yes right then. But that night, she found herself standing in front of her bathroom mirror in her housecoat, Otis sleeping behind her. She sang just a few lines of "At Last." Her voice wavered, then steadied. She wasn't sure who she was anymore. Widow, grandmother, volunteer, forgotten singer, but she knew that voice was still there. And maybe it was time someone else heard it. The Greyhound bus pulled into the Atlanta station just after sunset. Evelyn Dupree stepped down cautiously, one gloved hand gripping the rail, the other holding a small suitcase that had seen better years. Her Sunday hat, neatly pinned and cream-colored, gave her an air of quiet authority even in the chaos of exhaust fumes and hurried travelers. "Miss Dupree," a young man in a headset called out, barely looking up from his phone. "I'm with American Torchlight. I'll take you to the hotel." The driver never offered to take her bag in the van. Evelyn sat silently while the assistant hummed along to a pop song on the radio, never once making eye contact. As the city lights of Atlanta blurred past, Evelyn watched young people rush down sidewalks in sneakers that cost more than her monthly pension, their voices loud, their lives fast. She felt invisible and used to it. The hotel was shiny and modern, with too much glass and not enough warmth. The concierge glanced up and down at Evelyn like she was a misplaced relative someone forgot to pick up. "Contestants are on the 5th floor," he said flatly. No smile. Her room was cold, spotless, and impersonal, all beige and chrome. She placed her suitcase on the bed and opened it slowly, removing her dress with care. It was deep plum, handmade by her own mother back in 1971, and pressed neatly every year since. A dress that had waited as long as she had. The next morning, the production assistant, a young Latina named Jasmine, knocked on her door. Evelyn opened it with her usual grace, offering a polite smile. "Hair and makeup at 9, then blocking rehearsal." "It's a tight day, ma'am." The studio was a monster of lights, wires, cameras, and movement. Evelyn followed Jasmine through it all like a ghost wandering through someone else's dream. People passed her without seeing her, young dancers with airbrushed skin, vocalists with agents and TikTok followings, makeup artists tugging rollers from hair with military precision. "Station 4, Jasmine pointed. "That's you." The makeup artist assigned to her didn't introduce herself, just nodded and began working, brisk and clinical. Evelyn sat still, obedient. "You allergic to anything?" "No, ma'am." "You want us to soften the lines, or leave MB?" Evelyn paused. "Leave MB. They earned their place." The woman glanced at her, then nodded, perhaps for the first time seeing the quiet resolve behind those deep-set eyes. When Evelyn stepped out into the main rehearsal space, Chase Landry was waiting. The producer smiled big, teeth bright, voice smooth, but eyes calculating. "Miss Dupree, our golden heart. You made it safe, I hope." "Yes, sir. Thank you kindly." He gestured around the room. "It's all a lot to take in, I know. But you just do your thing. Sing from the heart. Viewers eat that up." She heard it then, the slight condescension, the way he stretched the word heart, like it meant simple. "I'll do my best," she said evenly. As she turned to find her place, she passed a young contestant with green braids and bold eyeliner, humming scales under her breath. The girl looked up and gave Evelyn a nod. "You the church lady?" Evelyn blinked. "I suppose I am. You singing gospel or what?" "Actually," Evelyn said, "I'll be singing at last." The girl whistled. "Heavy hitter. Big shoes." "Big memory," Evelyn replied gently. "It was my husband's favorite." The girl grinned. "Knock him out, ma'am." But Evelyn knew. This wasn't about winning. Not really. It wasn't even about music. It was about ratings. Spectacle. A well-timed tear and a montage with piano music playing underneath. She'd seen it before, black women held up for sentiment, but never seen for their full power. She'd taught about it. She'd lived it. And yet, something in her stirred. Maybe it was the music box tucked in her bag. Maybe it was Leona's stubborn faith. Maybe it was Harold's voice in her dreams. Whatever it was, Evelyn decided that when her moment came, she wouldn't give them the sweet, smiling caricature they were expecting. She would give them her truth. The dressing room was small, windowless, and lit by overhead fluorescents that made even the walls look tired. Evelyn sat alone, hands folded in her lap, her plum-colored dress draped over a hanger hooked to the back of the door. She had an hour before the live taping. The silence was heavy. Not oppressive, just thick with old ghosts. She reached into her bag and pulled out the tiny music box. Still worked, even now. A soft, tinkling version of At Last filled the space, its delicate notes trembling like breath. Her fingers hovered over the box, but her mind was miles away, 50 years back, in a room not much bigger than this one, where she'd waited to audition for the Alabama State Chorale. Her hands had shaken then too. Her heart had been young and eager, but the panel hadn't looked at her voice, they'd looked at her skin. One judge, a man with a neatly parted comb-over and a tie too tight, had spoken for all of them. "You've got raw talent, Miss Dupree," he'd said, not unkindly. "But we're looking for someone polished, someone marketable." She knew what he meant. She'd always known. After that, she'd gone home, put away the audition dress, and told Harold she'd be switching majors. He'd kissed her hand and never argued. Just said, "Sing for me anyway." And she had, at cookouts, at church, over crib rails when their girls couldn't sleep. But never for strangers. never for judgment. Now here she was, decades later, surrounded by production assistants who called her ma'am, without making eye contact, and stage managers who spoke to her like she was furniture that might fall over. A knock on the door broke her thoughts. Jasmine again. 5 minutes to places, Miss Dupree. Thank you, baby. As Jasmine turned to leave, she hesitated. Can I say something? Evelyn nodded. My abuela, my grandmother, she used to sing that song when she cooked. At last. I haven't heard it in years. I saw your rehearsal. You got something real. Don't let these folks tell you different. Evelyn smiled. A real one, small but warm. Thank you, child. That means more than you know. After Jasmine left, Evelyn stood and changed slowly into her dress. She pressed her palms to her sides and breathed in deep. At the vanity mirror, she saw herself, not just the lines, not just the silver at her temples. She saw the girl who had once believed, the mother who had sung lullabies through tears, the widow who stood at her husband's casket and couldn't bring herself to sing that day. But today, she could. She applied her lipstick with care, a soft rose shade that used to be Harold's favorite. Then she tucked the music box into her purse, stood tall, and opened the door. The hallway outside buzzed with movement. She passed a young boy dressed like a TikTok star, headphones in, bouncing on his heels. He didn't see her. Ryan Matthews did. He stepped out from behind a curtain, holding a clipboard. Miss Dupree, you ready to make America cry? Evelyn paused, leveled her gaze at him, and said quietly, I didn't come to make them cry. I came to make them listen. His smile faltered just a bit. Then he nodded. Fake again. Break a leg. As she stepped up to the wings of the stage, lights pouring in from above, applause echoed faintly from the segment before her, a teenage dance troupe spinning in sparkles and synchronized glee. Evelyn waited for the quiet, for her cue, and when it came, she didn't move right away. She closed her eyes, placed her hand over her heart, and whispered to herself, not a prayer exactly, but something like it. Let them hear him in my voice. Let them see more than what they expect. Then she stepped into the light. The lights hit her hard, bright, hot, and unforgiving. Evelyn blinked as she stepped onto the shiny stage floor, glowing under 100 lights. The applause that greeted her was polite and practiced, the kind meant for someone people didn't expect much from. She walked slowly to the microphone, standing alone in the center of the stage, feeling every eye in the room scan her face, her dress, her age, her skin. They weren't listening for a voice. They were searching for a story, something they could use. Her shoulders pulled back, like her body remembered what judgment felt like, and decided not to shrink from it. Ladies and gentlemen, the host said, smiling without warmth, our next performer is from Birmingham, Alabama. Please welcome Miss Evelyn Dupree, a retired history teacher and proud grandmother of 5, here to remind us it's never too late to dream. The camera zoomed in. Evelyn could hear it click into focus. The lead judge, a former pop star with perfect hair and a smirk ready to go, leaned forward. Miss Dupree, he said, his voice smooth and sticky, tell us why you're here tonight. She could have repeated what the producers had suggested, something about chasing lifelong dreams or inspiring older women, but she kept it simple. Someone I love heard me sing, she said. They thought the world should hear it too. That's all. There was a short silence. Not awkward, just long enough to notice. Then the judge gave a polite chuckle and asked, And what will you be singing? At last, Evelyn said. Her voice was steady, her face calm. The judges exchanged quick glances, like they'd heard this song 1,000 times and didn't expect anything new. But Evelyn didn't explain herself. She just stood quietly and waited. The music started, slow and soft, strings filling the room like warm tea, and Evelyn closed her eyes. Not because she was nervous, but because she needed to go somewhere else. Somewhere safe. Somewhere Harold was still alive, dancing with her in the kitchen on a Friday night. The world back then was small, full of love. It smelled like cornbread and cologne. Back then, the future felt wide open. When she started to sing, it wasn't a show. It was memory. The first line came out low and shaky, heavy with feeling. Someone in the front row gave a soft laugh, not cruel, just unsure, like they expected her to mess up. But then she found it. That place in her chest where joy and pain lived side by side. Her voice grew fuller, richer. Every note carried her story, years of life, love, loss, and survival. The room began to shift. People stopped whispering, stopped moving. By the chorus, even the cameraman had forgotten to blink. Up in the control booth, Chase Landry leaned forward. His smile was gone. His mouth hung open. The director whispered, Are you seeing this? But Evelyn didn't know. She wasn't thinking about them. She was singing like this was her moment, like she had waited her whole life to be heard. Her hands started to move with the rhythm, not rehearsed, just natural, graceful, like telling a story through music. And when she reached the last verse, her voice soft, then suddenly strong. The entire room held its breath. "You are mine," at last. The final note floated in the air like a feather, and for a second, everything stopped. No clapping, no noise, just silence, the deep kind, like after something sacred. Then it came, one clap, then another, then all at once. A wave of sound, loud and unstoppable. Everyone stood, teens with earbuds, judges wiping their eyes, even producers who had written her off. They clapped like they were cheering for someone they had just discovered. Evelyn stood still, breathless, tears in her eyes, but not falling. She was stunned. For the first time, 1,000 people were really seeing her, and somewhere deep inside, the voice of her old choir director, the one who once dismissed her with a polite smile, finally disappeared. Not because of the applause, but because her voice had spoken the truth. And this time, everyone heard it. Backstage, Evelyn stood just beyond the curtain, her chest rising and falling slowly as the crowd's applause echoed behind her like distant thunder. She stepped off the platform and into the narrow hallway where the other contestants waited. They moved aside without saying a word, not out of pity, but because something about her had changed. The air around her felt different now, like they'd all just seen something they couldn't explain, but couldn't ignore. That a stagehand clutched his headset, wide-eyed, and mumbled, "I think she just broke the internet." Evelyn looked up and saw Jasmine waiting at the end of the hall, already in tears, her smile shining like sunlight after rain. Without a word, Jasmine opened her arms, and Evelyn stepped into them, letting herself be held for a moment, like her body needed it more than she'd realized. Ryan Matthews showed up seconds later, walking fast, eyes darting from his clipboard to the camera crew and back again. But when he saw Evelyn, really saw her, he stopped. His mouth opened, as if searching for the right thing to say, but the usual polished lines didn't come. Instead, he just said, "That was something else." His voice, for once, sounded real. Evelyn nodded gently, saying nothing. Not because she didn't appreciate it, but because she was still inside the song, still feeling that moment when everything shifted and the world seemed to open up. The other contestants looked at her differently now, not with smiles or doubts or curiosity, but with quiet respect, like they knew she had done something brave, something that couldn't be undone. Later that night, in her cold, beige hotel room, Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed with the lights off. The only glow came from the TV, replaying her performance in slow motion. The crowd, her trembling hands, that final note floating in the air. Headlines scrolled across the screen, "Voice of a Generation. Grandmother steals the show. Raw, real, unforgettable." Her phone buzzed nonstop on the nightstand. Messages from her daughters, missed calls from home, voicemails from strangers, but she didn't answer. The noise could wait. The quiet she felt now mattered more. Then came the knock. Not room service. Not hotel staff. It was Leona. Somehow, she'd talked her way past security and made it to the 5th floor. She stood in the hallway, holding a small bouquet of carnations and baby's breath. Her cheeks were wet, and her voice shook. "I told you, Missy," she said. "They weren't ready for you." Evelyn took the flowers and, for the first time since she walked off that stage, laughed. A quiet, warm laugh, the kind that rises when grief and joy meet and sits side by side. They sat on the bed without saying much. Just two black women who had seen too many closed doors, too many forgotten voices, too many dreams cut short to make space for someone else's comfort. And in that silence, there was peace, more than words could hold. After Leona left, Evelyn opened the music box and let the soft melody play in the dark. She was tired, not just from the day, but from everything that came before. The kind of tired that only comes from carrying dreams too long. But she also felt awake in a new way, like something inside her had finally stood up straight. She reached for her phone and started scrolling through the messages. One made her stop mid-swipe, a number she didn't know, with a simple message: "I saw you tonight. I was wrong. You were always more than enough." G. Wallace, Alabama State Chorale, read, her old choir director. 50 years too late, but still, not too late. Evelyn Dupree, 69, grandmother, widow, church alto, and now, whether she liked it or not, a national headline, leaned back against the pillows, closed her eyes, and let herself believe, maybe for the first time in decades, that she hadn't missed her moment. Maybe her moment had been waiting for her all along. The morning after her performance, Evelyn woke to sunlight streaming through the hotel window, soft and golden across the bed. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then she saw the flowers on the nightstand and her phone buzzing nonstop. The world had found her name and wasn't letting go. She sat up slowly, her body stiff but her heart light. At the mirror, she looked at herself, really looked. The silver in her hair, the lines near her eyes, the softness that life had given her. And instead of seeing someone past her prime, she saw someone who had survived it all and still had more to give. Her phone buzzed again, a link to a morning show replaying her performance. Headlines called her America's Grandma, the comments full of fire emojis, tears, and words like soul, icon, chills. It didn't feel like pride. It felt like something deeper, like being seen. Truly, for the first time, she had spent her whole life making herself small, being polite, staying quiet. And suddenly, the world wanted her loud, wanted her whole. Jasmine knocked with a schedule, rehearsals, interviews, even a call with a record label. Evelyn took it, then asked softly, "Did you really hear me last night?" Jasmine nodded. So did everyone. Evelyn looked at her hands, the ones that had typed lessons, braided her girl's hair, held Harold's face when he left. And now, those hands had held a microphone and told the truth. "I've been singing small all my life," she said. "Didn't know how loud I was till I let go." Jasmine's voice caught. "You didn't just sing. You changed something in that room." When she left, Evelyn opened her music box again, not for comfort, but for direction. Then she returned a call, not to a label, but to a small nonprofit in Montgomery. They wanted her to talk about legacy, voice, and Black women owning their stories. She said yes. That night, back in the studio, surrounded by lights, stylists, cameras, she stayed still inside. Let them fix her dress, clip her mic, call her icon. But she knew the truth. The world loves you when you move them, and forgets you when you don't. But not this time. Not if she could help it. Have you ever been underestimated because of your appearance? Share your experience in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story about fairness, click the like button and subscribe to hear more inspiring stories that remind us what really matters in life. And tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We'd love to know.